Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is Sunday morning, 7 o'clock here in Calgary, Alberta, March 21st, first day of spring, and I'm happy to be here. Glad that you can tune in and, hope everything is well in your lives. And we're just we're going to continue on today. This is child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. We're on for half an hour this morning, and we're looking at the Survivor to Thriver workbook, and I know we've been working on this for weeks now, and I just wanted to keep going in it instead of breaking it up into pieces and going on with something else and then going back to it, because it wouldn't make much sense at the point where we leave off and then come back to it two or three weeks later trying to get back into it. So I thought, well, we'll just cover it while we have time and while I'm still doing Blog Talk Radio. So I just thought we'd just finish it, and it's such a good workbook. It's the Survivor to Thriver workbook I found at www.ascasupport.org, and that's Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a more center program, and this Survivor to Thriver workbook you can pull up on their website, and anybody can pull it up. It's free, and they suggest that if you haven't come along very far in your healing yet, to make sure you have somebody with you to do the workbook, and also, even group support would be the best thing they said, and also to do the Safety First chapter, which is the first 34 pages or so of the workbook called Safety First, just to make sure you're in the right place, in the right frame of mind to be able to go through this workbook, because it could trigger you, right? It could trigger me, it could trigger anybody who's a survivor of child abuse of any kind. And so, we want to make sure we're in a safe place. So if you're not very far along in your healing, you might not want to listen to this program. Just turn it off. It won't hurt my feelings at all. And really, it's better for everybody to be safe. I just can't stress that enough. And so, and if you're a young person, this is not a professional show. I don't hold any counseling or any certificates of any kind in counseling or therapy. And so, it's not meant to replace professional help. And I'm just a survivor who studies child rights. I study human rights. I'm actually, a part-time student at MRU here in Calgary. I'm in between courses, and so that's why I'm doing this Blog Talk show. And also, I'm a survivor myself, and I know how hard it is, this daily walk, to make sense of the abuse and to make sense of why I do what I do. I can't go back and change the past, but I can change how I feel about myself, and I can change about how I feel about life, and about the abuse that happened to me and my family, right? My family members. So that's why I'm doing this. It's very intensive, and it does bring back some memories and stuff. So if you're not in a safe enough place to do that right now, you don't want to listen to this show. And you can always come back and listen at another time, and you can pick up the archives. The archives are free. You just go on to blogtalkradio.com, check out the archives. There's a whole mess of them there, so you're welcome to do that. You don't have to listen live if you're just not sure if you're in the right frame of mind. So be sure and make sure you're safe. And children, I just think, young people under the age of 18, your safety is like number one. So, that's what I fight for, is child rights. So make sure that you have someone to listen to this with you at least a couple of times to make sure that they think it's okay, that's something that you should be listening to. And then you can get help with it if you have questions and stuff, because abuse is it's a very sensitive subject, and a lot of people, it isn't talked about all that much. And so except for in the paper, when we see the news reports of the children, dying at the hands of their caregivers and parents and stuff, and other sexual predators. So there isn't a whole lot of talk about abuse, and so that's why I think it's so important for young people to have someone to listen to the show with you, so that if you have questions or you just have something that's just bothering you, you can get some help with it, right? So that's, I just want to make sure everybody's in a safe place when they're listening. And so we're going to continue on. We were looking at, yesterday and Wednesday night, we were looking at stage 1 in the Survivor to Thriver workbook, which is actually page 65. It's chapter 4. It's called Stage 1, Remembering. We went through all that. We looked at step 1. I am in a breakthrough crisis, having gained some sense of my abuse. And then we looked at the self-help part and the professional help part. That's how they work this workbook here. Step 2 is, I have determined that I was physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. So they cover that, and then they have the self-help and also the professional help recommendations there. And then step 3, it just goes on like that. There are 21 steps, 21 steps, and we're on the second one. So there is quite a ways to go. 115 pages long, this workbook. And so it's quite an extensive workbook. And I'm going to go ahead and do this on my own, like, in my own time sometime. I'm going to go through and do all the questions and go through the workbook myself, because it's pretty extensive, and I can't quite do it while I'm talking on the air. But I'm going to go ahead and do this workbook on my own, and so it's a great workbook. So we'll look at step 2 today. I have determined that I was physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. That's when a person actually determines that they were, and the stuff around it, and self-help and professional help. So we'll look at that. And so I'm just glad you can be here. You can pull this up again at www.ascasupport.org. page 69 of the Survivor to Thriver manual, and if you want to go through that with me, I'm just reading right from the page, and I'll probably throw in some of my own stuff too, just because I find, it's always helpful to have someone to talk to and who's been there and who has experienced child abuse. It's very helpful to me. That's why I belong to some support groups, and they're online-based support groups, and it really helps to have someone who's been there and experienced sort of the similar things, maybe not exactly the same thing, but we all know how hard it is, and so it's good to have someone who's empathetic and knows what it's like to be abused. You know what I mean? If a lot of people, if they haven't experienced child abuse themselves, they just can't quite get why a survivor has a hard time moving past things. And I've had people tell me, "Oh, how come you just can't get over it? It's not that big of a deal." And how could that even have bothered you? I've had people tell me that, and I'm like, well, if you could live for like 2 minutes in my shoes, I'd give you a gold medal, because, if I could live 2 minutes in somebody else's shoes, I'd deserve a gold medal too. It's a hard road for people who have survived child abuse, and I just think people should put themselves in somebody else's shoes first before making stupid comments, because really, unless you've experienced it yourself, you really have no idea the psychological and the emotional problems that it can cause, and what happens, to make a person actually hate life and hate themselves, and go through a myriad of all kinds of problems and psychological issues, and having to learn how to cope and do it all ourselves. That's why it's so important to reach out and get some help. I never did, and just over the years, kept it very much to myself. I told a few friends and lost most of those friends just because they felt I was just too damaged and just needed professional help, and they just couldn't be that person for me. And so I should have got professional help. We all should have. My whole family should have from way back, and they were told to, and my parents didn't do it. So, they were always, they kind of brainwashed us into thinking that, that most people were just out to hurt us. And actually our family was the one that was out to hurt us. You know what I mean? Most other people probably wouldn't have been. But that's just how warping and how twisted our parents' thinking process was, So because they were, not well themselves, so they passed that on to us. So, I grew up thinking, no way, I'm not going to tell a therapist or a counselor, because they'll just use that information against me to hurt me even more. That was always in the back of my mind, and that's why I never reached out for professional help. And now I see, actually talking to some counselors and therapists, that people are out there really, they just want to help, And so it's so important to not allow, these past warped, twisted thoughts from abusive parents to take over our thought processes as adults. We have to look for that help and reach out where we can find it, right? So important. So step 2, I have determined that I was physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. Step 2 asks you to determine and then acknowledge to yourself that you were abused as a child, and that the effects of the abuse may be causing some of your difficulties as an adult. Many of you who are in the process of recalling memories of your past may not yet have objective evidence of the abuse, and you may never find outside validation or corroboration of what happened. Instead, your evidence may be more intuitive. Even in the absence of hard evidence, these intuitive feelings are significant and should not be dismissed. Many abuse survivors were either too traumatized or psychologically incapable of organizing memories into words and images that can be recollected years later. If this is where you are in your recovery now, continue to work this step to clarify the kind of abuse you suffered. If you need to, refer to the section on false memories, real memories in Chapter 1. And they go on to say here, an important sub-goal in this step is learning to accept your feelings about the abuse, whatever they may be at this time. And these feelings may not make complete sense to you, but they are there for a reason. In the same way that the pain from a bruise tells you of a physical injury, the feelings associated with your abuse signal an internal emotional bruise. Instead of ignoring the feelings, you should try to figure out what those feelings are telling you. As a survivor, you probably had your feelings invalidated by your parents or abusers, so not recognizing your feelings as valid may be an old pattern you want to break. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt when it comes to verifying your feelings. You will need time and help to sort out what happened, free of the denial and distortion of the past. At this point, the connection between your abuse and your current problems as an adult may be very tenuous. It will take more work on the subsequent steps in stage 1 before you can firmly establish this link. In the meantime, keep an open mind as you explore the reality of your abuse and let the meanings emerge with the new information and understanding that you develop. And so that's what they have to say about that when we finally make the decision that yes, we were abused, whether it was physical, emotional, sexual, whatever type of abuse we suffered, or all of the above. You know what I mean? Then we have to go ahead and work through those feelings and actually not stifle them and validate them ourselves by saying, okay, I'm just going to go with these feelings because obviously there was something wrong, something happened, and not everybody can remember abusive. My sister is like that. She doesn't remember. I think she doesn't want to remember most of everything. She says she can't remember, and maybe that's the truth. And I remember a lot of it. I remember there's certain things I don't remember. It's very foggy and kind of vague, and those things I don't. I figured they'll come out in time. But most of it I actually made a very mental note of because the whole issue is I was really trying to survive in a family that I thought that I was not going to survive in. It was kind of my way of staying alert. Instead of going somewhere else and allowing my mind to wander away, especially as a very young child, before the age of, let's say, 11 or so, 10 or 11, I really wanted to stay alert in that house because it was a very dangerous place to be, and I found that it didn't matter what I was doing, I was going to be abused for it, and whether it was physical or verbal or emotional, and I just wanted to stay alert to try to keep myself alive at that point. But by the time I was 12, I decided I'd just start trying to escape from it, so I started doing drugs and really started just not caring whether I lived or died. It was kind of, at that point, I decided I just didn't care if I lived or died anyway, so, I started doing a lot of drugs and stuff and wasn't trying so much to stay focused and stay alert and stuff like that. I just didn't care anymore. And so, that can happen to people. My sister actually just says that she doesn't remember most of it. She only remembers certain things. And so that just can happen. My brothers are no longer here. I can't talk to them about it. And so it is very hard. And as far as validation goes, I just know that God saw everything. So, when I go to meet him, that's fine with me because I know he was there and he saw it. So that's all I need to know. If no one else wants to come out and validate anything, that's no problem with me because I know what happened and I certainly know that God knows what happened. That's my piece right there, right? So yeah, it's very it's hard on us. It's hard on people, and I know, if you're having problems and issues, because of the abuse that you suffered, I just pray that you will hold on and just keep looking for that hope, keep reaching out and make sure you find someone who you can talk to. I never started reaching out till about 5 or 6 months ago, and when I started to reach out, all these hands started reaching out to me, and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe how many people started reaching out to me. I had never experienced that in my lifetime, and most people pushed me away. My whole family pushed me away, and our family was very dysfunctional, so we couldn't really help each other. And so friends, they would just, like I said before, they would just dump me, or I would dump them because I didn't appreciate their views on anything and didn't want any more abuse from anybody. So I was kind of just on my own and just dealing with this stuff on my own. And when I finally started reaching out, all these hands started reaching out to me. I was like, wow, this is great, man. I've never had this kind of support in my entire lifetime. And so it has helped. It has made a huge difference in my life. And I feel like it's empowered me really to do what I'm doing, actually, and just to feel that sense of love, really, that I missed out on the whole time I was growing up. It's allowing that inner child to feel the love that she needed so long ago and didn't get. So that's the thing. It's so important to reach out to people who can help us, and not hang around with abusive people who are just hurting us. We need to find people who are helpful and who want to see us, succeed in our healing journey, and want to see us feeling so much better and doing well for ourselves. And those are the people you want to hang around with, not people who are just going to try to hurt us even more, right? So I'm very particular on who I hang out with and who I let into my life, because I absolutely refuse to take any more abuse off of anybody. I just won't do it. I'm an adult. It's my choice. And I fight for child rights and human rights for everyone, right? So we all have human rights, and children have rights. It's sad that children don't, they can't stand up for themselves. So that's why I'm doing what I do. And so important that we all just get help, if you've survived child abuse. So self-help, this is what they actually suggest for self-help. Then they also suggest for professional help a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll read the self-help stuff first, because that's how it comes in the book. The number 1, write down the date that you first acknowledged the abuse to yourself. This date will signify the beginning of your recovery. Remember it well, as you will want to honor this date in subsequent years when you are enjoying the fruits of your labor. That's awesome. I think that's a great idea. And over the course of a week or two, they said, look over an old family album and photographs or home movies that you may have. Just leave them around the house so you can look at them and think about them at your leisure. If you have no photographic records of the past, try some visualization exercises, such as imagining taking a walk through your childhood home, your relatives' houses, or your old school. So that's really going back, isn't it? And I know myself, I do that because I wrote my book. I wrote a blog, and it was called Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home. I started that blog last pretty much like October, and decided to go public with it in November of last year, and decided I'm willing to do this because I want to go and do public speaking on child abuse prevention and awareness and education. And I decided, okay, my name's going to be out there anyway, and I want people to know that I know where they're coming from, and I want other people to know, who are not abused, to be able to know that I'm a survivor of child abuse. And I thought, okay, then my name's got to be out there, so I'm not going under a false name or just a made-up name. And I was totally cool with that blog being out there. And then I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and they saw my blog and they thought, this should be published, and we should get this out here to people so that people can see there is hope, and that that they can, if they hang on long enough, and just keep reaching out, they can get some help and they can find their peace, and I thought that is so cool, but I wasn't sure if they were really serious about it, publishing that story. And it turns out that they were, and best-selling author and president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, Donna Shear, I asked her, I said, are you serious about this? And she said, yes, I want to publish your story, I want to do it. But they left it, they did publish it. It's called A Life of Death, The Redemption, and you can find it. It's at Lulu. But all the proceeds are going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and that makes me so happy. That's my wish, and they're gonna honor it. But the thing is when that blog came out, I thought, I'm gonna have to be willing to put my name out there and put my story out there if I'm gonna go do public speaking and stuff like that, and really get involved in the whole thing. And when they did that, that was so cool. But going through and writing that blog, really, that's kind of where I was trying to get at. I actually was able to see the rooms that the abuse happened in, and I remember them completely. I could even draw pictures of them. I know exactly where I was sitting in the house. I know where I was sitting in the bathroom. I know where I was in the bedroom, and I can draw everything out. I know where the furniture was. And I remember, as back as early as being age 4, and the abuse that I took at age 4. I could tell you where everything was in the house. I know, that's how cognitive I was. I was really alert, and I think it's because I was so shocked into being alert, because it was life or death in that house, man. So, you had to be paying attention just to keep yourself alive, So my sister actually closed in on herself, and actually, but she didn't suffer the same physical abuse that I did. So hers was mostly verbal and emotional. So she didn't have to worry about, blows to her head and stuff like that. I had to really watch out, stay clear of my mom, especially if I could. And so there was a difference in the abuse that we suffered. So I remember a lot more than she does because I was paying attention just to try to save myself, and slinking around and making sure I was out of the way of people and stuff like that. So it is very sad what happens to kids, and I know, but I actually do that on purpose. I'll keep those memories going because I want to help other people, so I don't want to close them off. But other people, it's up to you and your therapist how much that you want to hang on to. And I suggest a therapist myself. I'm still going to look for a therapist myself, a counselor eventually, and so I can work through some stuff with them. And it's a good idea because I just can't afford one right now. It's unfortunate, but eventually I hope to do that. So yeah, I have been able to visualize everything and what happened and who did what, and who even said what, and it's amazing what a person can actually remember. It says, if you enjoy art, draw a picture of your parents and family members. Draw a picture of yourself as a child. Include as much detail as you can recall. If the words to describe the abuse episodes are still escaping you, try drawing pictures of whatever memory fragments you have of the abuse. More details of the visual images will probably come to you as you continue to sketch out what happened, and eventually the descriptive words will follow. I haven't done any of that. I remember I drew a picture when I was a kid that was for school when I was about, I think it was 7 or 8, and I had to draw a photo of our family, and I drew a 2-story house. We didn't have a 2-story house, and I drew a picture of the family, and everybody was crying. So, and people were like, "Oh, how come you were crying in the picture?" And I was like, everybody had tears, It was just bizarre, It was just my way of saying our family needed help. We were upset and everything was bad. So, it's just crazy. So that was number 3. Enjoy, drawing pictures and details of the abuse, and maybe do some like some writing with it, like descriptive words and stuff. And it says, number 4, you might consider writing your autobiography, starting with your earliest memory and working forward to the present. If you can, make a trip back to your hometown to research your autobiography. Interview the people who knew you as a child and ask them about their memories and perceptions of you back then. It says here, let the impressions, memories, and feelings wash over you. Write them down in your journal for future reference. Well, that's what I did. I decided to write my blog, and I went from a point where this family had this sort of come into my life that actually changed it all for me. Had they not come into my life, I don't know where I'd be today, honestly, because they actually, first of all, saw the abuse and went down and talked to my mother, which it didn't change anything between me and my mom. But the thing is, it changed something in my heart towards myself. They were so good. They told me that I didn't deserve to be treated that way. They would go to the police if I wanted them to. They were there for me for a couple of years, and even onwards. I didn't spend a whole lot of time with them after a few years because they moved and stuff. But I knew that they were there for me in spirit and they wanted the best for me. And I thought, man, my own parents don't even want that, And I thought this one family took the time and the trouble to let me stay at their home off and on when things were bad at my house, and just to give me a break. And they provided just so much of a normal family surrounding for me to see that I think that, I don't know what would have happened had that family not stepped in. So that's where I began writing my journal and my blog, right? And not everybody might want to go public with their blog, but it's good to do even if you're not going to go public with it, and just to keep it for yourself, just writing down your autobiography. I do agree with that. I think that's a great idea. And then number 5, start recording your dreams and nightmares in your journal. A week or so later, reread them and write down any impressions, specific feelings, or images that come to you. Don't worry if everything seems disconnected. As you add the feeling and image details to the picture of your childhood, the whole picture will start to take shape. And I've heard that it's a good idea to start writing down, dreams and nightmares and stuff. And that way, we don't forget, because quite often if you dream something and you wake up and you don't write it down right away, we forget what it was, right? And so it's a good idea to keep some pen and paper right by your bed, and that way, if you wake up from a dream or a nightmare, you can write it down right away, and then you don't forget, right? Such a good idea. And it says in ASCA meetings, that's Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, in the ASCA meetings, share your acknowledgement about being abused as a child and your feelings about this realization. So that's if we were going to go to the meetings that were hosted in our cities, right? It's quite interesting. Professional help. Talk with your therapist about the fears and apprehensions connected to remembering the abuse, and what are you afraid might happen if you remember it all. And what reason might there be for wanting to keep some of all or all of these memories at bay? And number 2, talk to your therapist about what, if anything, you need in order to fully reclaim these memories. More time, specific assurances or information from your therapist, or modifications to the structure of your sessions that might help you feel safer and more in control. Whatever it may be, you have the right to tailor your therapy to your individual needs. And number 3, if you have not been able to remember the specific episodes of abuse after a year or so of therapy, ask your therapist about other techniques to help you reclaim the memories fully. There are a number of techniques that can be used to aid memory retrieval. Some are more effective than others, and some are more effective with certain people at certain times. So all require that your therapist be trained in their use and competent in practicing them. And remember, there may be good reasons for your still not remembering all of your abuse clearly, and both you and your therapist will want to respect this. And we'll go on with step 3. We have 4 minutes left. We'll start step 3 tomorrow night at 9:30. And yeah, that's so true. And I know in this Survivor to Thriver workbook, they said that, people should work at their own pace, and that that's so important. They actually stress that in the first chapter, Safety First, that we all work through our healing process and this remembering and stuff at our own pace. So important, and I like that. This book is not trying to push people through and say, oh, you just need to move as fast as you can. This is really good advice for all of us, right, to work through it at our own pace, even steady pace, because we don't want to regress in our healing. We want to move forward, but just at a very steady pace, and that way we can handle and accept the changes and the feelings and the different things that are happening, around us, and because it can all seem really quite overwhelming sometimes, right? So we have to move at our own pace and when we're comfortable. And I really like this book. The ASCA, www.ascasupport.org. It's a great website. And there's links and stuff on there, and they do have some good information. And it's not an extensive website, but they have the Survivor to Thriver workbook on there. And so, I recommend it to everybody. And I just think that I'm far enough along in my healing that I can do that. I've already faced it all, pretty much all of the abuse, and so I'm okay to do the workbook on my own. But if you're not, you might want to get into a group, or talk to your therapist about it. I just think it's a great idea. And so yeah, we'll go on with this stage 3 tomorrow night. And step 3 says, I have made a commitment to recovery from my childhood abuse, and then we'll look at the self-help part of that and the professional help part of that. And then there's step 4. There's 21 steps. Step 4, I shall re-experience each set of memories of the abuse as they surface to mind. So see, it's very extensive, and it's a lot of work, and, we'll just keep kind of going through it, and you can go and grab that book yourself and just look at it on the website. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I'm just, so happy that you could tune in and join me. I'll be on tonight, Mount Bethel Christian Worship and Fellowship Bible Study. I just love God's Word and love to share it while I'm doing Blog Talk Radio. I just thought I'd throw in one of those shows. But I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we have a great website. You can check it out, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. All kinds of good information on there about child abuse, everything, signs and symptoms, really, which we all need to know. We need to know how to report child abuse. If you suspect a child is being abused, you need to do the right thing and make a phone call. So important. Most people just think, oh, well, what if the child's not being abused, and then I break up their family and whatnot. Well, children are dying at the hands of parents and caregivers, and to me, I don't think that they have made mistakes and stuff in the past by removing children that shouldn't have been, but the ratio just isn't there. The amount being removed from the homes is because these children are suffering, and there's physical evidence of these or children being abused. It's just so important. We could save a child's life by making a phone call, and I know that I don't have any children, but I tell you what, I'm on the lookout, and I know the signs and symptoms now of all the different types of abuse. It's just so important, and you never know when a child's going to come to you and say, hey, I'm being abused, and how would you handle it? There's ways to report child abuse, and you have to do it properly, or you could ruin a case child, and the child could be stuck back in that home if it's not reported properly. So it's so important to know how to report child abuse, and know what questions to ask and what questions not to ask. And that's the kind of stuff you can find on that website, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren. And there's other links there. There's all kinds of links for each state. There's all kinds of information there for parents who are having problems and think that, they might be abusing their child, and how do they get help and they don't want to, and how are they going to deal with this? They love their kids, but they don't want to hurt them. There's so much great information, and I keep passing this website on to everybody. It's also very healing for survivors. I know I go and sit there and look around and see all the videos and the different things and the music, and just because I find it very healing for me to go and sit there and hang out on that website. So it's a great website. And yeah, so I appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you just hang in there. Just make sure that you just keep the hope alive. That's what I had to do, and I know that's what we're all doing. The hope that, that we can have better days, and that we can have the life that we deserved. If you were abused as a child and not given that good life, that good start to a good life, right? We have to do it ourselves as adults, right? So it's so important to keep hanging in there and just make a commitment to yourself and just say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to win, because that's what I said. I'm going to win. I'm going to stay alive, And that's such a huge thing. We can do it. It's going to be a bumpy road for sure, but we can certainly do it. Other people have done it. Other survivors have done it. And so I know that we can do it too. We just have to keep reaching out to people around us, and keep reaching out and finding those people that are willing to help us out and be part of our lives and help us get through all this. So take care, everybody. You're in my heart, and I just, I appreciate you tuning in, and thanks so much for everything. Have a great day. Bye-bye.